Good afternoon, everyone. 4 o'clock here in our central time zone. So we'll get started with today's webinar. My name is Tom Florian with the Iowa High School Speech Association. We're excited to have you with us for the third session of the 2020 Coaches Convention for the IHSSA. A couple of housekeeping items before we introduce today's panelists. You'll notice that the chat feature has been disabled for today's webinar. We encourage you to use the Q&A function, which can be found either on the bottom of your screen or potentially the top of your screen, depending on if you are on a mobile device or a laptop or a desktop computer. So find that Q&A button. If you click it, you'll be able to submit questions and comments utilizing that feature. We'll be able to answer them throughout the presentation. We'll also have time at the end of both presentations to answer some of those questions as well. You'll also notice that this webinar is being recorded. We will post the session to the IHSSA website, hopefully later this week, if not early next week, for you to review at your leisure. So those are the couple of housekeeping items. Again, thank you for being with us. And it is now my pleasure to introduce the Executive Director of the Iowa High School Speech Association, Craig Enan.
Well, thank you, Tom. You know what? It's a great day for speech in Iowa, and I am so excited that you're here with us for our third presentation of the Coaches Convention. And right after this, remember, you need to get ready for the banquet because the banquet is coming very soon. But anyway, the first individual that is presenting for us today is an excited young individual because he is part of the Coaches Convention Committee. And that is Kevin Hosbond. Kevin Hosbond is going to be talking to us about Mime and working with Mime, which you're really going to enjoy. Kevin has been a district officer. He's on the Coaches Convention Committee. He's been to All-State many times with his mimes, and he is known for having the longest title in mimes in the history of the IHSSA. So, Kevin Hosbond, enjoy.
All right. Thank you, Craig, for that introduction. And it's so true. We did that on purpose just for you. Well, we wanted to use up some of the ink over at the printers there at IHSSA. So I'd like everybody to know right off the bat that you're going to need something to write with, whether you're doing that with, the old pen and paper, or you can take notes somewhere digitally. That's your choice, but you'll see an icon that'll pop up every now and then when I want you to just do a quick little jot down of some information or some ideas. All right, so here we go. Learning to mime on IHSSA's stage. We're going to go on a little journey here, a little departure. Right now, you're in the ordinary world. Maybe you're unsure of following the call of doing a mime. Maybe you're kind of stuck. You need some counsel. Well, here we go. We're in this ordinary world right now. I want you to think about, how are you stuck? What's holding you back? What's challenging you with mime? Let's take like 5 or 10 seconds, just jot down a really quick idea for yourself. How are you stuck? What's holding you back? What's a challenge that you're facing? Come with me. Let's work on that. The initiation. The next part of our journey, we're going to enter maybe a special world. We'll face some tasks or some obstacles. Maybe you'll obtain a prize or get some wisdom as well. So the first part of this journey I want to talk about is how I in particular worked with casting the Mime team here at our school at Grinnell. The thing that I like to do is to form the team first. I like to cast the roles later. You know, our students come to us with a variety of attributes and abilities, so we try to create roles that enhance these gifts that they're bringing to us. So a couple of quick thoughts. Have you placed your best actor or actors in Mime? If not, try it. Or have you placed your emerging actors in Mime? If not, try it. Right now, I want you to write down 2 names that you never thought you'd consider from both sides of your talent spectrum. Think about your students that you already know this year. Write down 2 names. Guess what? They're in Mime this year. Now, a couple of notes on casting. You can use all sorts of these gifts and abilities that they bring For instance, with this clip I'm going to show you, we had a student who was pretty small in stature. So you know what? We made him this character that we carried around for pretty much most of the mime. And I apologize in advance streaming these videos to you over Zoom. And they might be just a touch glitchy, but they're going to be on the website later. So you can always go back and rewatch them. But let's give it a go here. So here's the student. I don't know what this looks like for you. It could be glitching, but we basically carried him on the shoulders of those two individuals. Tom, you'll let me know if that's not working. On this side, we had a combination of fidgety energy and some kind of stiff-limbed people as well. They made an excellent cast of mechanized beings. This boy could not hold still. So his character basically bounced everywhere. He had accordion legs on purpose. So we made him always move. These students here were a little bit stiff in nature, so we just turned them into a Siamese robot and just stuck them together and let them do their thing. One thing they could do well was make a kind of a fun face, and you'll see that at the end of the clip. So imagine being stuck to your mime partner for most of rehearsal. Kind of scary stuff. So also other talents your kids might be bringing to you. They might have some tricks that you need to figure out when you play, and we'll talk about that in a second. But maybe your kids know how to flip. The two boys in this that are flipping around had told me they were taking a parkour course, so we used that to our advantage. Or maybe your kids just know how to dangle. This young lady here could do this kind of fun shape with her body. We turned her into like a creature that's just how she walked. So how do you figure out how you're going to tell this story with this cast once you have them? Because I like to cast first for the most part and then figure out the story. There's a lot of different genres you can use. You can use fiction. I really kind of stick to that the most, science fiction, realistic or historical fiction. Personally, I love magical realism because I feel like the possibilities are endless. And I don't think that technicality and like all those really finite technical realistic skills are a strong suit, but in magical realism, you can make your kids do pretty much anything and kind of get away with it, which is pretty fun. Also, nonfiction, you can find really awesome true stories based on real events that you can tell really well. Typically, I've kind of evolved over time, and about 90% of my stories I actually am writing with the cast in the team once they're in the room. Maybe about 10% I've come to the group already, like, here's the story, I wrote the whole thing, now let's do it. So let's begin. You might notice we're going on a little bit of a hero's journey here. I'll refer to this a couple of times, and then there's some links for you to look at. But we're leaving our world, our known world. We've gone into this like magical place to learn some things. It's a very common trope in all sorts of books and movies and television shows. A simpler way of looking at that is this graphic here. And I've also got an article that you can click on later to read that's really helpful. But we think of it in three parts: the departure, the initiation, and the return. So you've left your ordinary world on an adventure of some sort, you encounter a helper, you have these tasks, and then you come home the new you, or transformed in some way. You've made some choices along the way. And you can also play with that, of course, as we've done in the past. So here's a bunch of words for you to look at. But what I've done here is I kind of outlined how we followed a hero's journey in a mime from long ago. It's called Weapon of the Republic. In this one, we have the call to adventure. You don't want to go. Maybe there's something supernatural happening. There's a point of no return or a first obstacle. So in our case, we had a professor who was teaching, approached by some strange government agents to make a mutant monster warrior. He refuses. They threaten him. So then he has to agree. So the thing that pushed him on the journey was a threat in this case. So in the initiation, there's lots of trials. You might have allies or some enemies. There's some temptations along the way. You face doubt and fear, but you might accomplish your ultimate task. So in this mime, in the initiation phase, the agents are actually assisting the professor in gathering all these human parts. Is kind of Frankensteinish a little bit. And then the professor is questioning all of this, but makes the choice and then creates and programs this mutant monster. They have a bond, they bond. And then the agents pay the professor. They order the monster to kill him. The monster chooses to refuse. They shoot the monster, professor escapes. In the end, maybe there is an escape with the object or with the quest. You return to your world and you find a new peace or balance. In our case, the professor was teaching class again, and he thought he was back to his new normal. And he turns around as the class exits. He sees the monster sitting at a desk. The monster approaches the professor, grabs a book, and opens it and asks for knowledge. And they hug. It's a really special ending. So you can kind of see how we played with that hero's journey. So let's do a quick little mini version of this really quick here. There's the icon. You're going to do some quick writing. So think of an object, grab an object near you or look around. I'm looking, oh, I found a book. Ooh, cool. So I've got this book on my desk here. And what could I do with this? I want to twist it in some way. Okay, maybe it's magical. Perhaps if you open the book, whatever you open it to, you fall into that world perhaps. Okay, so quickly look at an object, take like 10 seconds, find the object, and then make something weird about it. I'll give you a few seconds to write or think. Now, what kind of ordinary world would this object be in? Okay, so I have the book. I'm just going to go with, okay, we'll go with library. It was in a library, right? Maybe it's on a table or on a shelf. Who might use it? Perhaps somebody that's looking for a book to check out. A librarian. Okay, so let's write down who would use your object. Where does it exist at this moment? Quickly write that idea or just think it to yourself. Now, how does the object get us into our new world? So I had mentioned, like, what if you open the book and then you fall into the story, right? So that's kind of cool. So I think I'm going to go with that. That's how it gets us into the new world. Maybe the librarian like knows there's a student that's missing. And they're like, I don't know where this kid is. And they see this book sitting at a table and then they, whoop, boom, they have fallen into the story as well. Now the story's going and we can start that adventure. So how does your object get your character or characters to the new world? And what kind of obstacles might the object help with? In my case, I just thought, okay, maybe it'll help us find this missing student from the school, or perhaps every time I turn a page, I go into a different story or a different location in the story or this magical world that we've fallen into. Or I can go backwards in the book and then suddenly we're going back in time and maybe like figuring out how did this even happen? So I can use it as some sort of rescue object. So what might your objects do? How might it help in the obstacle that you're facing? Maybe once you get out of the book, you turn it back in and you're like back home because you've returned your book. I don't know. You can do all sorts of crazy things there. So that's kind of how we play with the storytelling idea, but that really actually happens in rehearsal. I'm going to go quickly through our rehearsal phase, but later in the slides that you'll have access to, I dig into that a lot more. We basically do three things. We play and figure out what kind of things can students do. We write and practice, figure out characters and stories, and then we revise and kind of like re-energize the mime. And I've got some ideas for that as well. So just know that we have a three-phase process that I like to do. And there's a lot more details for you to look at later. So let's get into lots of tricks and innovations here. So the first one is kind of funny because one of my tricks is that I have a rule that all the actors have to touch at some point together in the performance, in the mime. This year, that's going to be maybe a little bit different. You'll have to think about how that's going to play out in your school, your community, with students, with families. What's your level of comfort and what's the level of safety and health reasons that you might do that differently. And I've also been thinking about that this year, but here's some examples of where everybody touches in a mime. So you can see we're using students' bodies to lift or to support in some way. And also we're doing that in safe ways. We had a cheerleader come in and help us do the lifts, so we were doing that properly. Another trick or innovation that I like to use is creating, beasts and monsters. Here was a fun one from many years ago, the fire-breathing dragon. I want you to watch for the flame. So that was kind of fun, a little flame shooting out. So the reason I'm showing you a lot of these is because I thought, how can I do something crazy and weird? And we asked the students, what can we do that's just different this year? We want to push ourselves. We want to inspire other teams across the state. Let's do something crazy and new. One year, in fact, actually, don't tell Craig, but I had a mime that had improv in it. 45 seconds of that mime that performed at Allstate was improvised every single time they performed, which is kind of a fun. That group was a bunch of really special students who had worked so hard their whole career here at the school where I was, and they were like, let's do something kind of weird like that. So we did. And here's some students that we use something called mini mime with. Sometimes you just need to get to your locations faster. So we made our people tiny little things. This was a chase scene. So he's running across some buildings, being chased by a flying monster. He's grabbed by the monster and carried away. And then he's carried up to this castle and then dropped, and he falls and turns back into his normal human size again. Boom, he's landed in the misty castle location. So that's kind of a fun use. We use mini mime a lot. It's a great way to transition. This was a fun one. I wanted to have a character that was like a bunch of students all together, and the character could speak to us or speak to the actors. So here's the talking tree. I've used this one a few times. Earlier, I was watching that one and it kind of glitched for me the most. So I'm just gonna play that one more time in case it did that for you. We'll take a quick look. So this is actually, there's 4 people making this talking tree. Rehearsing something like that might be very different this year, and you might not do that for your own, for obvious reasons. Here's another thing to try: move the scenery, not the actors. So they're basically on a stagecoach, and we just moved all the trees and everything else in the scenery, and they were still, when we got to our location, then they were able to move away, which was kind of fun to do. I know I'm kind of focusing a lot on large group or a group mime right now, but here you can use a lot of these in solo mime. Of course, not a bunch of people because there's one, but something you can apply in solo mime is invisible characters and multiple characters. So watch the student both use focus to show that there are other characters that she's interacting with, and then also she becomes another character in this mime. She actually played 3 different characters, I believe. So she notices somebody walk in, and that person grabs her and is hauling her away. So physically, she's now showing that someone else is there taking her. She transitions into a different character, physically very different. So, and then she comes back and becomes the original character. So we had invisible and actual other characters that she played in that particular scene. Let's take another look. There it goes. The Great Beheading. I've used this one a few times. A lot of people email me about this one. So here it is again. If you haven't seen this one yet, it's kind of scary if you're ready. that trick, all it is, it's, you know, the little like cut the thumb and then it wiggles over there kind of a trick. That's all that is. And I actually had used that in an ensemble acting to chop someone's hand off, and then used it in a different way in mime. Well, speaking of chopping off hands, we had a beheading. Let's show you a behanding. So he is stuck over here with some shackles. She's prying them open. They can't get it off, so they have to choose to cut off the hand. There it goes. Ouch. We should watch that one more time just for fun. We have time. And also, you might notice how we're masking the trick. There's a third actor that is involved in that trick. So she's trying to cut off the shackle. She gets it. While she masks the trick, it's set up. That's not his real hand. That's somebody else's. And off they go. They'll be handing. That was kind of fun to play with. Another thing you can do is use focus to send focus to other parts of the scene, and also even a split screen mime, like a dual screen. This is a tape from like a rehearsal before districts. So it's a little old, but a little rough. Let's take a look and see what these students do. They're going to show physical focus. They all do a subtle movement together. It's sort of similar, but we know like, oh, something's happening. And then you're going to see a physical, directional sending of focus. They're all looking a certain way and doing a physical motion. And then we're going to go into, there's a little bit of something else here. And then you're going to see some split screen action right after this actually slows. Actually, a little more focus here. A lot of chaos around the central actor. So we keep the focus on her. We're going to see some soldiers. And then right after this, we'll go into split screen. So on one side is the army battling a giant, and he's flicking away. Off they go. So just a little example of split screen. We use a lot of different variations of that. And of course, I've seen so many of you out there doing things like a lot of this. So our challenge, I believe it was this past year, no, 2 years ago, we wanted to walk through a wall. That would be kind of fun and make an actor disappear. Let's watch that. So we set up the trick. Then we also rotated it like a film. We rotate the scene. So he's carrying a person through this wall, it's kind of a magic wall, and she's gone. That was really fun to rehearse. It takes a lot of trust. This year we wanted to play with some zero gravity. So here's some students flying around in a space capsule. We also rotate this scene like a film, so we can go into the capsule now. And we use other students to fly. So sometimes they fly on their own, and then we also use some lifts and carries to make them fly as well. Here's another example of they're outside of this lunar or the space station. They're gonna go repair something, and then they float across, and then go do their work. Kind of a fun little thing. We just wanted the group wanted to do lots of lifting that year, so we did. Okay, so let's come back. We're on the return here. We're gonna come back to our original world. Maybe you've transformed a little bit. Maybe you've seen like some tricks you're thinking, whoa, that was cool, or I'll never be able to do that. You totally can. So I want you to think about, what are you feeling about mime right now? Are you feeling some sort of inspiration, just a little inkling, like a cool idea? Maybe you wrote an idea down earlier. Right now, I want you to write down a goal about mime for yourself or for your team for this contest season. My goal right now is to figure out how to socially distance them and tell a cool story, because I know I have a lot of fear personally with my team. I know there's a lot of kind of fear right now as I've spoken to some students. So that's going to be a goal I'm going to think about. Give you just a couple seconds, then we're going to get to questions pretty soon. So quick review, we went on our own hero's journey, if you didn't notice. We were in an ordinary world. We thought about that. We jumped into a new world. I gave you some helpers or some examples, maybe some inspiring ideas. You completed some tasks with me. You wrote. I made you watch some stuff. And then we are back in our kind of our old world, hoping that you're emerging with some ideas as well. Your ultimate obstacle, though, is to actually, put this together and make a mime this year to bring to contest. So thanks for going on that little journey. Welcome back. If you'd like to take a deeper dive, I've got a bunch of other sections on the slideshow that you can see right here on style, more on casting, storytelling, games that we use in our playtime and in our reinvigoration time, how we run rehearsals. Placards are kind of a fun thing for me personally. Some ideas on music and just a quick little reminder on some tricks and innovations. But I want to give you a few minutes for questions. So thanks for going on the journey with me. I'd love to do some answering right now. So please go ahead and ask away.
Well, Kevin, thank you for a fantastic presentation. Really great information, great tricks, some inspirational elements there. So thank you for sharing that with us. Folks, if you do have questions, please feel free to submit them using the Q&A function. You might also utilize the raise hand function. I can then call on you and provide you the opportunity to ask a question live as well. But please, let's take a moment. And if you have questions, feel free to submit those in the Q&A or raise your hand.
Hey, Kevin, this is Craig, and I want to talk to you real briefly about, as somebody's putting together questions, placards are really important. Talk to us about the placard a little bit more.
Okay, awesome. So I left this up so I could go right to that slide. I knew that one would be popular. Placards, you have to clearly state the title. That is the requirement for IHSSA. You have to have a title. It should look professional, but that's not a requirement, but you do have to have a title. I like to provide visuals of important objects or characters or ideas. I think of the placard as kind of like an intro. We give intros in a lot of categories. That's your intro. Here's a quick view of some sample placards popping up on the screen. I did include the longest title in IHSSA history just for you to see that, Craig. It didn't even fit on a placard. I had to add some parts. So yeah, so there's that. Other questions?
Yeah, Kevin, we had a couple. The first one was submitted regarding music and dealing with copyright issues. The question is, how do you choose your music and how do you deal with the copyright?
Great question. So that has evolved over time as we've become more and more scared about copyright, right? So music is not required, as you can see here, but it sure is helpful. I like to use it because it creates an environment. No words, no words. You can have human sounds mimicking instruments and things, but no words. You can go to ASCAP. I have a link there to find all of the music we're allowed to use as part of the IHSSA agreement. You can go, I have a link to free stuff online. There's tons of free music. Students have made music for a lot of mimes in the past, or I know many of you out there have students that can do that as well.
Also, Kevin, if the school has the BMI license, they can use anything out of the BMI catalog free for contests also. You don't even have to write for that. So ASCAP and BMI. So one of the things you want to ask your activities director is, do you have a BMI license? And they should have that. And if they do, you're in.
Awesome. Maybe one or two more?
Yeah, you bet. So the next question here is related to the hero's journey style. Is that something that you always use, or what other styles could you use?
Well, I discovered that I have almost always used it by accident, and because it just is a common, thing that we sort of do in the way that stories work. That's pretty much what I always use by default. I don't necessarily think about the hero's journey. It sort of can happen, but I definitely think about the plot diagram. I follow a plot diagram of some sort with a climax to the story that hopefully happens near the end of the mime, usually after about the 6-minute mark.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing that. We have one other question that came in that I'm going to ask. Will you be available to contact when we're closer to the individual event season?
Thanks for asking. I'll put this up on the screen. Absolutely. I will totally help you. If there's my email, that'll be on the slideshow that'll be on the website, but you can take a quick snapshot or photo or write that down, and feel free to contact me. I'm happy to help. Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Kevin. That was wonderful. I really appreciate it. and you had so many interesting things. What's interesting here today is that both Kevin and Ted presented together on Mime at one time at our convention. So we're excited to have them together, but we're bringing Ted in because Ted has another great background. And the person that we're going to be talking to next is Ted Deventer. And Ted, I am so proud of Ted over the years because Ted is the director of theater speech activities at the Walnut Creek School, which is the alternative school in the Valley school system, also teaching at Valley High School. But he has worked with alternative students where he's had students go to district, to state, and all state from the alternative school. And we are so incredibly proud of Ted. Everyone, you need to get to know this guy in person because he has a way of working with young people that is so wonderful. And he's going to be talking to you about short film, and his handout that's already on the website is truly amazing. So Ted, take it away.
Wow, Craig, I'm blushing. I do appreciate it. I am going to put a link. I was going to put a link. Maybe somebody can put a link to the Padlet that I have for you guys. I'm going to share my screen here. I don't know about you guys, but I normally use Google Meet now. So my Zoom knowledge and capability aren't quite as good. But yeah, so I created, first off, I am not an expert at short film. I just got into it a while back. I started writing a screenplay and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is great. And so one of the categories that came along as I was coaching was short film. And I decided, oh my gosh, this is exactly pairing what I want to do creatively with a category. And so it's one of the categories that I've tried to do with my alternative high school kids. And I also get to insert myself. That's why I also love solo mime and group mime, is because I get to be me and I get to, use my talents to help out with the kids. So, and I have two very different coaching things. I think short film is absolutely great for your at-risk kids at your high school. It doesn't matter where you're teaching, you are teaching at-risk kids. Everybody's at risk, but some kids are a little bit more. And trying to get those kids into your program, I think will do those kids even better than your kid who's, student body president, on the football team, on the baseball team, in band and choir. I mean, those kids are fantastic too, and we want all kids to participate in speech. But we definitely want to get those kids who are at risk. And it is like pulling teeth sometimes for me to try to get some of my at-risk kids to do things. And so one of the ways that I can, because maybe they can't come to contests because they work or they've never really been involved in anything. And so maybe I'll try to get them to do a short film or radio news or something that I can kind of record prior to contest, just in case something comes up and they're unable to do it. And then on the flip side, I got at Valley, and we're practicing 3 times a week, and those kids are there every time, and they're totally into what they're doing. So it's just weird to have those 2 different experiences. But that's why film. Film will get your kids here. So I made this Padlet. I don't know how many of you guys out there are, finding all sorts of new technology things to do. I know I'm doing a hybrid. I'm doing both. Teaching kids in person and online at the same time, which is probably the worst of both worlds. And even though these kids who are, they're used to watching YouTube and being on all the time, they don't ever want to actually like engage with me. At least my at-risk kids don't. So it's just this new medium. But I found Padlet. I like it. I think it's a good way to have kids post, comment. So if you guys don't have this Padlet link, I hope you can somehow get it and get on here and be able to use this, because this is really my presentation. So one of the resources, and really all I did was I Google searched for you to find this stuff for the most part. Okay, so I Googled, short budget or it's low budget, no budget short films, and I found an Edutopia article, and you can click on it right here. In this article, they have all of these great YouTube links to all of these different people trying to give your kids some tips and tricks on how to make short films. And they're fantastic. In fact, after I watched a couple of these, it's pretty embarrassed by the films that we created during my times that we've created them. And even watching other of your guys's short films that some of your kids have put on YouTube, wow, there is just some really high quality content. And the great thing about this is these kids are going to have lifelong memories about this film. They're going to remember very little about progressive era in history or about some of the stories that they were forced to read, but you know what? They will absolutely remember making a short film. And I sent, when I was putting this together, I have some of my former students. I sent them a text and was like, "Oh my gosh, I just found this! What a great memory!" And he was like, "Oh my gosh, he's made my day." And that's what it does. These kind of bonds that we make when we're doing any of these speech categories are really lifelong memories for these kids and for you as the director. So that first one's great. The second one right here, no budget filmmaking, doesn't work. The link doesn't work. That happens. And when you're thinking about doing a film, there's a couple of different aspects to it, right? There is the screenplay, there's the storyboarding, okay? And I'll just show you maybe, of course, I gotta move this somehow, there we go. This is a storyboard. I just started kind of putting this together. I don't know if you guys have used Jamboard. I'm hoping that this is good for you guys, not only if you're gonna do short film, but if you're teaching out there and you're looking for some resources to use, and maybe we've been resourced out this year, I get that as well. But this is a storyboard. This is called Jamboard, and you can kind of do anything with it. You can put images on there. But storyboards allow kids to kind of think about the kind of shots that they want to do prior to actually filming it. There's so much pre-planning that should go on in good films before you ever turn the camera on. And part of that is understanding the kind of shots that you want. And I think that Jamboard would be a good free resource that your kids could do. And you'd want them to be, sketching and drawing on here maybe, or maybe not. I'm not much of a drawer, but that's a drawing. But I just put some pictures, took some screenshots from a couple, one of the films that I did called The Accidental Hipster. And it's Wyatt on the left and Connor on the right. Both are fantastic kids, and really enjoyed making this film with them. Where was I at? Okay, so yeah, so we're going back to this top 10 tips. The other one that I really, really wanted to highlight, you can shoot with a smartphone. These kids and their iPhones. Their iPhones now, this is an 11 something for Apple. Now they have the 11 Plus S. It's got 7 cameras. It shoots in 4K, 3D. Who knows what it's going to do, right? But it's really a fantastic thing. They don't even need the DSLR camera. They could shoot it on their phone. So filmmaking is so much more accessible than it's ever been. And editing is such a huge thing. They'll get to that. But this one, I really wanted to highlight this one. This guy, Darius Britt, does a fantastic job of talking about errors that are commonly made in student films, okay? and from having just too much white space to not using the, the rule of 3 or whatever, of thirds, or of empty space. Like there's so much empty space in my presentation right now. Oh my gosh. I wish you were not recording this time. But editing, right? Editing is such a huge, huge thing, and it takes so much time. And if kids start doing this and start getting into this, they'll figure out how much time it takes. And then they'll figure out how much time it takes sometimes to render, depending on the program that you're using. There are just those different steps. There's the concept, and that's where I think you as the director can really help them. I use this, Seth, I saw this, I'm a big, huge Twitter fan. Wow, waste a lot of my life on Twitter. But I follow Seth Rogen, one of my favorite screenwriters and movie makers. He said, me and Evan have been working on a script since 2016. They did 130 drafts, and they finally got to a place where they're excited about it. My screenplay, which I wrote 95 pages, I have 1 draft. Gosh, it's scary to read, to think about going back and that's why I'm getting paid to teach. Probably too much to teach, but I'm not getting paid to be a screenwriter because I don't have 130 drafts of my patience level to go back and to do. So I wanted to share that with you, and I put that on the jam boards on here under the tips and tricks of the day or contest things. And what I'd like you guys to do is, I would like you guys who have ever done short film, who are out there, I know you guys are much more of experts than I am when we're talking about short film. And I want you guys to add your contest tips and tricks. And I'll get to more of those. I also, again, I was just doing the research for you. I said, wow, take a look at this site. Maybe Craig should have just had these guys who created this website come do this session. It would have been better, I'm positive. And I actually have this open, I think. But short film stuff, what a great title. But there's really good, there's sound effects, there's royalty-free music here for you. And I think if you're doing Mime, or you're doing radio, or you're trying to find some copyright-free stuff, this music thing has just a ton of different resources. Now, some of them you have to pay for, and some of them, sorry, but you don't have to pay the royalty, but you'd have to pay for this sound of the music. But look at this. I mean, this is just a ton of different ways in which you to find some music to either put on your film or to put in any of your other IHSSA categories. There's visual effects, sound effects, stock footage. So you don't have to shoot everything. There's all sorts of things. There's all sorts of images and movies already out there that you can use and bring into your short film. Let's see, where was I? Yeah, so I think that short film stuff is a fantastic resource. And then software for editing, I mean, I think that's one of the biggest questions people ask is, do you use iMovie? Do you use, there's all sorts of things you can use. I've used Adobe before, and a lot of that is just about whoever is editing that, like, and what your community uses for technology. We don't use Apple's, and I'm sad about that, but there's WeVideo that our students in our district have an ability to use. And there's this, if you click on here, there's a couple of different, here we go, the best video, OpenShot, a simple editor for beginners. Maybe your kids need, something more intense. And you'll see, I think, I've had kids that are really into film already that already have the software. I think you find that at some schools and some years, but some years you kind of have to, push the cart and help. And that's where maybe you come to my Padlet or ask me some questions about what, how you can do a better job or how you can find these kind of resources. So those were the resources I found. I'm sure there's way more that you guys could use, but I didn't want to overload you with information. I even put the I don't know, you guys are all, I deal with Stacy Hansen, who's like the most organized person that I've ever met in my life. And then there's me who, gosh, if you look at my desk or my house is a little bit cleaner because, I'm trying to stay married. But just the short film judges comment sheet, I just put that on there just as a way. I think it's always important to, as Stacy has reminded me, to look at the rule book, which I've made mistakes, big mistakes, like not brought my script for, I don't know what category it was in solo, but we did bring our script and got my person DQ'd. And even though they're probably going to get a 2 or a 3 anyway, I still felt bad that I didn't go about the right protocol. I think so important, a couple of my tips about just actually the making of the film. I think sound is so important. It's paramount to the enjoyment and the professionalism of how your entry comes across. You don't want to have things where it's just uber loud. I always try to think about the judges. Yeah, we have some hipper, younger judges, but there's also some people that have as many gray hairs as me. They're watching your film. You don't want to, blow them away or have them unable to hear the important things that you want. And of course, this is really important. Make sure everything works prior to districts, state, all state. Make sure that you have the right speaker that'll project for that room. Make sure that you have double and triple checked that your film works, that is downloaded onto your device and it's not out in the cloud. And if it's out in the cloud, I mean, normally that'll end up working, but that's really important. And I'm sure Craig would chime in that yes, that is also really one of his biggest things that it's always in every Swift article I think I see is make sure if you're doing short film that there will be something there for you to use, but make sure you have some stuff. Also, I am a big fan of the voiceover or kids not acting with dialogue at times. I don't know why. I like the acting and the dialogue here in the Accidental Hipster. It's okay. They do a fine job. But this Romeo and Juliet one, I did. These are 2 films. This is the first film I ever did. I don't know what year this was, 2011, 2010, and I think this one was 2015. But this Romeo and Juliet had no talking either. I think it just sometimes it can distract from the story. Kids, I mean, I know that sounds bad. That's why if you do this with kids, they really need to practice. This is not, first read. Some of the stuff that I've shot has been just first read, making stuff on the go, and you can tell how the quality really just goes down. So if you are recording with live, kids talking, I really think they need to do a lot of rehearsing before they just a lot of times I feel like film, or at least the way I've tried to make films, it's oh, go, let's do it. I think it needs a lot more than that. My last thing, and I'll be done. I looked at this film. It's called The Drop. I shudder to play it. I'm going to play just a little bit of it. I know the audio is going to be a little choppy. I'm not going to play it there. I'm going to hopefully play it here. It's called The Drop. All right, I'm not going to show the whole film. What was really cool is I thought this was just such a fantastic use of voiceover. And this kid, who is not a kid anymore, this is in 2013. This is the first video to play at Allstate Festival. I had no idea. I just was watching some IHSSA films, found this one, and absolutely loved it. And so then so today I looked into this guy. I was like, oh, I looked at his channel. Oh, he's got 7,000 subscribers. He must be pretty good. He's not good. He's like really great. He is a cinematographer in the real life. And so it's great to see how IHSSA is able to, encourage and promote short film, and there are real life careers in this. And so I ended up just going on his Instagram or somewhere, and I emailed him, and he had this to say. He said, "Thanks for the kind words. The drop was a fun project. I'm still good friends with the actor." I can't read the rest because my face is in the way. Anyway, so he said it was the first film ever done. He's from Linn-Mar, Marion, and I didn't even know where he was from. I mean, I thought it was great. And he talked about, how he ended up doing this, some of the process of that there. And I thought that was fantastic. I was like, this made Sam Fatala made my day, because getting a chance to, talk to him, talk to the filmmaker, it was fantastic. So that really that made my day, and made this whole thing worth it. Even though I'm not an expert, I did add a couple of my films. I would love it if you guys would share some of your student work, talk about it. I think it would be great to just have a real, repository, or I don't know if that sounds kind of like suppository. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking. I kind of George Bush it at times. So add your own student work here. Whatever you can do to make this helpful for you guys or your students, I would love to see that go. So share this away. Thanks, Craig.
Hey, thank you, Ted. Hey, and one of the things I want to talk about, and then Tom will go into the questions and stuff. You talked about the music on the cloud and stuff. There's a real good reason why you don't do that, and that is because most of the time it'll work at district because you're at smaller venues. But when you go to the state venue and you have 90 schools, 5,000 people, everyone's on their cell phones, guess what? You can't get into the cloud. And that is the problem. And there's been multiple times people have had their Mime music on the cloud. They haven't been able to get to it. In fact, one time at Spencer, Iowa, I had to go to McDonald's, download it on my phone for someone, bring it back on my phone so that they could play it for their Mime. And so, you just don't want to trust this. So Ted was right. And Ted, what a wonderful testimony from Sam. And I'm so cool that you found that, because I remember him and his work at Linn-Mar too. So Tom, you want to go ahead with some of the questions and comments?
You bet. Yeah. Thanks, Craig. And Ted, thank you for sharing all of those resources and great tips today. In the question and answer, we also had a few other web addresses that has royalty-free music and other services that can be used. So those of you who shared those links, feel free to use the Padlet link that was shared in the chat and is also on the website, and share those resources. Am I correct in saying that, Ted?
Yeah, it looks like there's some people who have already put a couple of tips on here, like Tyler. Thanks, Tyler, for sharing your tip. When I have had students do short films, I have put them in charge of it all. I would be available for editing the script, looking at the recording to see how it is, and look at the final piece. A lot of my students love the editing part. They use iMovie and GarageBand a lot, and that's great. And like I said, I only have been a part of their short films because it's just a real passion of mine. And sometimes I'm kind of pulling teeth, come on, you can do this, And but I think a lot of directors, you can up the number of kids that are actually in your program by saying, hey, you guys do it. You know how to do it. I'll take a look at it. So I think that's great. And here's some of the free royalty free from Laura. Laura, thanks for posting here. There's some other great resources for some royalty free sounds. So that's great. Thank you guys for adding to that. Here's another one. Here's a couple other links to some IHSSA short films. I'll check those out. So you can too.
A question that came in, Ted, is what do you use to film your movies? Do you have any preferences on those types of equipment?
Yeah, no, I've used a Nikon. I don't know if it's called the D3000. There's so many numbers associated with it, and Nikon and Canon are kind of like the DLSR. Sony as well make cameras like that. Anything really. But I was able to convince my wife to do that and to buy that for me. And then I also got like a shotgun mic, and I got some lighting at some point. And I've used the shotgun mic a lot. The shotgun mic really helps with getting the wind noise out of it. But your kids will have a pretty good idea. And there's so many resources on YouTube that I would have them look at because I know, but not very much about all that stuff.
Well, and Ted, the nice thing about doing the voiceover is really you don't have to rely on a great microphone when you're filming. You can do that in a studio and really have great sound then.
Yeah, I just think, if you watch Sam's video on the drop, just really, really professional. There was another one that won a couple of years ago, the All-State, Critics' Choice, was a voiceover about this girl. She was falling in a pool. That's kind of where I'm at, my remembrance of it. But it was really good too, and it was a voiceover. And then, but I did see a couple. There was this horror film one, kind of like spook one, with this like pizza guy killer. I thought it was great. There wasn't a ton of dialogue. And then there was one that did have a lot of dialogue with, they're sitting around a card table. And there's all sorts of great examples out there that these kids, over the 10 years that we've done short film, wow, I think it's one of the categories where people can really, really shine. And I think, I have not done it every year or anything like that, but there are some people that are really, really getting good at short film.
One of the things that's always important to remember when you're doing short film, and Ted, thank you for so much information, is please remember this is still a school activity. And sometimes we've had directors that had to edit little things because they were doing things that weren't permissible to happen in their school. So be cognizant of that. You're still presenting it in a school environment at a school contest. And
Sure.
So you have to be aware of those things. And, as an editor, you don't want to do some of that, but it's still, you're the producer of that, the school too. Well, Ted, thank you so much. Just wonderful stuff. And I know this information's on the website. Please keep using this. And everyone, our next Coaches Convention is November the 11th. Dr. James Weaver from the National Federation of High School Activities is going to talk to us about copyright and how we're going to be dealing with it during the COVID period of streaming and different things. And then probably the one that a lot of you have been looking forward to is how we're going to actually do contests this year. And that's going to be shared with you on November 11th. Please make sure you're a part of that. We look forward to that. Tom, thank you for being our MC again. And Ted and Kevin, amazing work. We are blessed by what you have done. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night, everyone.